Mama loved her Prince Edward Island so much, Nanny Louisa. Don't you think?
The biggest challenge about Road to Avonlea was actually writing good scripts. It became a monumental battle just to get the scripts out and have them be really, really wonderful. I was interested in creating a kind of a dream world that personified Prince Edward Island. Not that it would become a true fantasy, but it was more escapism that would become an antidote to the world that we live in today. I loosely based it on a collection of short stories by Montgomery called Chronicles of Avonlea and Further Chronicles of Avonlea, and a book called The Story Girl, which was where Sarah Polly's character came from. I realized they weren't Anne of Green Gables, but there was a body of work there that suggested an atmosphere and a time and a place, and I thought that if I could try and explain that world to writers who I wanted to work on the show with me, that they'd be able to read the books, get a sense of the dialogue, get a sense of the atmosphere. And I decided that I would rely on the performers and on the essence of Montgomery herself, that atmosphere, that sense of time and place that was so, that so permeated her books.
Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote about nature in a way that very few people know how to do. She sprayed nature on her stories. I mean, she just used such glorious imagery, and the reason she knew how to do that is because she spent so much time outside. Lucy Maud could write about nature because she knew nature, and so few of us do anymore.
The first script that was shot was written for Colleen Dewhurst from a very slight story by Lucy Maud Montgomery called The Materializing of Duncan McTavish. In it, Jackie Burroughs appeared in her very first scene, and I was so blown away by her because she upstaged all of the other actors.
You, Marilla!
Marilla Cuthbert won't look paler than that in her grave.
Jackie's feeling was that she was completely establishing her character, and she needed that moment on screen to define who she was, and she did. This began the love affair with the character audiences began to love to hate, Hetty King.
There's always a crisis, and there's always something going on that's, you know, it's an interesting thing, I think, Lucy Maud Montgomery, you know, because she was very interested in older people and very much younger people, and that combination, you know, that sort of older spinsterish ladies particularly, she had a big bent for, and which is me, and little children, and so and the kind of cross temperaments that go on.
For every performer who came on, their personalities were always so unique and so strong that it became very easy to write for them. It was a real partnership in terms of what the performers gave and what myself and some of the other writers wanted to write about. And it kind of took off on that basis. There were no parameters put on it. It was very organic in terms of how the stories grew. I would say that the scripts really grew by one good idea after the other. So we were opportunistic in terms of how we approached them. Once we were done one script, we would start to think about, okay, what relationships really worked out of this one? Where did it develop? How did it get to that point? I would always say, let's go with the flow, and I became a kind of armchair quarterback at inspiring the best ideas out of the writers. Who would come in and propose and pitch different things to us about what they liked about their characters or what they liked about the show. The freedom to develop a show that way made it really, really special.
So much goes wrong. You can't believe it could be over in 45 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like within the first 10 minutes, whoever is the central character is like in it, up to their necks, and it gets worse. And to me, that's good writing, you know. You just don't imagine you can't imagine how they're going to get out of it this time. And it's quite touching to see somebody just really going down for the count.
The really unique thing about the world that Montgomery created is that sometimes you have the sense within the way characters relate to each other that they absolutely despise each other. The relationship that Marilla and Rachel Lynde have, for example, seems to be one where they can barely tolerate each other. And yet, they often refer to each other as being good friends for nearly 40 years.
Nights, Rachel.
You weren't a bad-looking girl, and you had a passable personality. Why is it you never got a proposal?
If I may be permitted to speak my mind, why are you suddenly so concerned?
Well, there's no reason to get huffy, Marilla, I'm sure. But you've missed out, that's what. Lucy Maud wrote these two women, Marilla and Rachel, fighting and being quite nasty to each other. And this has an edge of reality. And then when it's resolved and when their real affection for each other comes out, that rings more true, too. It's not full of cliches about how people are. It's full of kind of truth of a different period, truth of another time.
Well, Marilla is a woman who is a spinster, has been all her life. Her morality is very strongly defined as to what is right and what is wrong. And fortunately, along with that, she has great loyalty. I like her because she has no sentimentality. She does not move on a false sentimentality about anything. She is very direct, and thank goodness she has a very good sense of humor.
So in fact they say everything, all their feelings, you know, that the older people are just as juvenile as the babies, as the children, right? And they fight dead on, and they take high dudgeon about this and that and race off, and there's always, you know, something that's gotten out of the barn, or so-and-so said something about somebody in the neighborhood, and we're all in arms about it, and it's really fun.
My dear Miss King, I have been Sarah's governess since she was a baby, and her father has entrusted her safekeeping to my care. I have no intention of leaving her now.
My good woman, this is not a hotel.
Quite clearly.
And I think that that's part of the unique experience of a little bit of familiarity breeds contempt. But on the other hand, it also speaks to the closeness that exists within tightly knit communities. And that really was the crucible under which I was able to create so many different stories about the people who lived in Avonlea. They were all based on that one commonality that through thick and thin, people will stick together in a tightly knit community, whether they have disagreements, whether they have a falling out. The nature of that tightly knit community is very different than an urban community where people can escape. They're forced to live together, and they're forced to work it out. And I think that's another reason why the world of Avonlea that has been so popular, because it's about people sticking together as opposed to people breaking up.
For people in a very busy modern world to look back at a time that was slower, and he imbued that text with all the qualities of that time, with the lovely feeling of family that existed at that time, with the feeling of excitement that children had about simple things.
When I had embarked on making it, I had no idea that it would have this kind of overwhelming appeal. And Meg Ruffman describes what happens to her when people come up to her on the street. She says they come up and they go, "Oh," I always get a big kick out of it.
We long to belong to some place, and so one of the best places that we can choose for ourselves is somewhere that makes us indescribably happy. And if 1903, Prince Edward Island, is it, which it is for so many people, that's why they always clamp their hands over their hearts when they talk about it. It really moved them. There was something about it that made them feel like, I just want to go there. I just want to be there in that place.
I met people down in PEI who had moved down to PEI from watching the show. So, yeah, I mean, that show caused people to put the population of Prince Edward Island up. And as a result, being there, yeah, that people were, they'd be more surprised to see me in Toronto than they would be PEI. And I think that says a lot for the show and then the quality of, what was brought to it.
And anybody who's played or been part of the making of this world, when they talk to people about it afterwards, it means they've been touched by it in some way. They've been touched because of the way the stories have been told and because of the commonality. And they find something in the lives of these people that enlightens them about their own life and is kind of a catharsis. And I think that's why people keep going back to it.
I've decided to stay.
And I'm sure given the chance you'll want to be off just as soon.
What did you say, child?
I said I'm staying.
Sarah Stanley, you come back here. Don't track that K into the house. Do you hear me? And I'll thank you to pick up all the things you've just dropped and forgotten about. I'll not stoop and carry after you.